So the last speech is from Mr. Mahmoud Yilmaz, Building Peace Through Service, Hizmet as Civic Infrastructure.
Is anyone in the meeting?
So for my paper, I have two authors. For my paper, I have two co-authors, Mahmoud and Jalil, and they are here. I just want to, they couldn't come here because what happened in Turkey to them. Their passports are canceled. They live in the United States. Mahmoud goes to University of Texas at Austin. Jalil goes to University of Texas at Dallas. So Mahmoud, I just want to introduce you to our audience. Would you please say something?
Yeah, thank you for everybody's time and to present our research to you.
Okay, and Jalil? Okay, we cannot hear him. Okay, beautiful. So we can go back to the slide. All right, so our studies, what I will present here will be a part of our research study, ongoing research study. And Peaceful Hizmet presentation will be this one. Perfect. Yes, that's it. Beautiful. Okay. So the first part of the study is presented in Virginia, in New Jersey last year, and we are still working on this study, and we are interviewing. We are focusing on Eastern Europe, Balkans, and we are interviewing teachers from the Hizmet schools to expand this study. I will be presenting just one part of our study today. And before I start, I want to talk about Fethullah Gülen, how he was using metaphors and analogies and parables when he was teaching. And it was very powerful. Through this method of teaching, you can bring very difficult ideas which are far away, very close to you, and you will be able to understand them. And some of the parables that Fethullah Gülen was using, they were coming from Christianity, like the ones that we see from Jesus, peace be upon him. Some of them are coming from Hinduism as well. So I want to share with you one parable today that Fethullah Gülen is using to explain the concept of his perspective on peace. And the analogy that he was using was about peace islands. He says that there are two perspectives on globalization. Globalization is a fact. It's going on, and we are interacting with each other more than any time in the history. Some people say that it will bring clash of civilizations. They will focus on the differences, and globalization will intensify the differences, and through them we will end up with clash of civilizations. Fethullah Gülen, he says that some people talk about it at the academic level. Some people believe in it, and some people act upon it. And then we end up with these terrible situations, all very concerning situations all around the world. On the other side, he says that, yes, globalization is a fact, but it can also bring an opportunity for us to see the collaboration of civilizations, cooperation of civilizations. So we can get together through globalization, and we can focus on the common problems that we are suffering all over the world, right? Like environmental issues, like poverty, like lack of any education, and we can all get together and support each other to solve these problems. And that's how he defines the concept of collaboration of civilizations and cooperations of civilizations. And to explain this, he used this analogy about peace islands. He says that the people who believe in clash of civilizations, and the words are very interesting, the words that he's using, their anger and their hatred will turn into hurricanes in the middle of ocean. And from these hurricanes, we will see huge waves, and these waves will get bigger and bigger and bigger. On the other side, people who believe in collaboration of civilizations, cooperation of civilizations, and also they will get together and they will form peace islands all around the world. And the anger and hatred coming from these waves, big waves coming from these people who believe in clash of civilizations, these waves will get closer and closer to these peace islands, and when they reach the peace islands, they will disappear on the shores of these peace islands. That's the analogy that he is using, and I love it. You know, that's a beautiful way. So today I want to share with you two parables, two analogies from Fethullah Gülen. One of them was this one, and the last one is, if we have time, at the end of it, I will share with you. So what we are doing here is we are forming peace islands. And that was Gülen's vision, where people get together and they form these peace islands in different parts of the world, supporting each other. Maybe their numbers, they are small, there are not many people, but the way they approach is very, very powerful. Because we are focusing on the universal values which are accepted by, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, by everyone. And that is our strength, which, unites us together. So, let me go over the abstract part first. Contemporary peace-building scholarship increasingly recognizes that sustainable peace requires more than post-conflict stabilization and institutional reconstruction. Although policy-centered frameworks have advanced peace-building practice, they often understate the moral, relational, and grassroots dynamics that sustain long-term social cohesion. This paper focuses on Fethullah Gülen's peace-building approach as a values-based, civil society-oriented model and analyzes its conceptual relationship with Barnett's three dimensions of post-conflict peace-building, which are stabilization, forming institutions, and normalization. This study argues that Gülen's emphasis on inner moral transformation, education, dialogue, and service, so those are the four things that I want to focus on. And throughout the conference, people categorize them in different ways, but I want to separate them into four categories. This deepens dominant policy frameworks by strengthening the ethical and relational foundations of durable peace. In contemporary peace-building scholarship, there's a growing recognition that sustainable peace requires more than the end of violence or the establishment of formal political and security institutions. While early conflict interventions emphasize stabilization and state building, many scholars now argue that durable peace depends on deeper social, relational, and moral foundations, including trust, and Gülen put a lot of emphasis on it: trust, legitimacy, reconciliation, and ethical agency. Peace building has therefore evolved into multidimensional and long-term process that must engage not only political structures, but also civil society, culture, and values. A widely cited contribution to this expanded understanding is provided by Barnett. That's why we focus in our study on his perspective on peace building, who conceptualized post-conflict peace building as including three interrelated dimensions: stabilization, forming institutions, and normalization. Their framework has shaped international peace building policy and practice by underscoring the importance of security, governance, and social reconciliation. At the same time, critics note that policy-driven peace-building frameworks can underemphasize moral, cultural, and grassroots dynamics that are essential for social cohesion and long-term legitimacy of post-conflict societies. In parallel, religious and faith-based approaches to peace-building have gained increased secular attention. Once treated primarily as source of conflict, religious people and moral traditions are now widely recognized as potential resources for reconciliation, social trust, and ethical transformation. Within this broader field, faith-inspired civic society movements offer valuable insight into how peace can be cultivated from the bottom up through education, dialogue, and service-oriented initiatives. Fethullah Gülen's peace-building approach represents one such model. Emerging from a faith-based inspired civil society tradition, Gülen articulates a vision of peace grounded in inner moral transformation, education, interfaith dialogue, and service to humanity, which is Hizmet. Rather than seeking political power and institutional control, his approach emphasizes ethical self-discipline, voluntary civic engagement, and non-violent social change. Although Gülen's ideas are not presented as a formal peace-building theory, they overlap conceptually with conflict transformation and with religious and interfaith-based peace-building frameworks. This paper argues that Gülen's peace-building framework complements and deepens Burnett's three dimensions of post-conflict peace-building by foregrowing the moral and relational foundations upon which durable peace depends. Through comparative analysis, the paper situates Gülen's approach alongside conflict transformation theory and religious and faith-based peace-building, highlighting areas of convergence, divergence, and added value. In doing so, it contributes to broader discussion of how ethical cultivation, education, dialogue, and civil society engagement can strengthen both relational and structural dimensions of peace in post-conflict and divided societies. Fethullah Gülen's peace-building approach can be summarized as values-based, bottom-up model of social transformation rooted in ethics, education, dialogue, and service rather than political and power of coercion. At the core of Gülen's thought is the premise that inner peace is a prerequisite for social peace. He argues that lasting peace cannot be achieved without moral and spiritual refinement. At the individual level, emphasizing virtues such as humility, empathy, patience, self-discipline, and compassion. Without internal transformation, he contends, structural or political solutions remain superficial and fragile. Education constitutes a major second pillar of Gülen's peace-building philosophy. Gülen views education, particularly education that combines science and ethical formation, as the most effective long-term means of preventing violence and social fragmentation. He identifies ignorance as a key driver of conflict and maintains that education can cultivate critical thinking, responsibilities, and respect for diversity, equipping individuals to resolve differences peacefully. A third element is dialogue and relationship building. Gülen promotes interfaith and intercultural dialogue as a moral and social necessities rather than strategic political instrument, and closely connected to dialogue is the principle of service to humanity, and I believe for Gülen that's maybe one of the most important part. Gülen emphasizes that peace is sustained not through rhetoric, but through concrete act of service, supporting education and contributing positively to society, regardless of religious and ethical identity. So very quickly, I will also talk about Barnett's three dimensions. So we already talked about it. So stabilization, first establishing the security in society, then forming institutions, legitimate governance organizations, and normalization, that is reconciliation, trust building, and repairing social relationship. So in our study, we are comparing this with Gülen's peace-building approach, which is moral cultivation, education, dialogue, and Hizmet. A comparison of Barnett's framework with Gülen's approach reveals significant conceptual convergence alongside differences in emphasis and implementation. Barnett provides an analytical structure often operationalized through international organizations and post-conflict government mechanisms. Gülen's approach is primarily ethical and grassroots, relying on voluntary participation, civic initiatives, and moral persuasion. These differences are also a source of complementarity, so they complete each other. With respect to stabilization, Barnett focused on immediate security management and the reduction of violence. Gülen contributes to this dimension indirectly by addressing upstream drivers of violence, such as ignorance, hatred.
1 minute. Sorry,
1 minute. Okay. This is the main part of the summary of the paper. Gülen contributes to this dimension indirectly by addressing upstream drivers of violence such as ignorance, hatred, arrogance, and unchecked ego. Rather than coercive control, he emphasizes non-violence, patience, and moral discipline. Education plays a preventative role by cultivating ethical awareness and critical thinking, reducing susceptibility to extremist ideologies and cycles of retaliation. In this sense, Gülen offers a model of preventative or upstream stabilization that aims to reduce the likelihood of violence re-emerging. In the dominant institutions, Barnett stressed the importance of legitimate institutions capable of delivering service and earning public trust. Gülen operationalizes a complementary logic through civil society institutions such as schools, dialogue centers, charitable organizations, and media initiatives that are explicitly grounded in ethical values. Education is central to Gülen's understanding of institutional developments. Schools are framed as sites for cultivating moral responsibility, intellectual excellence, and social consciousness, not merely technical skills. The strongest alignment between the two frameworks appears in the normalization, which is the last column. Barnett identified reconciliation and trust building as essential for repairing relationships damaged by conflict. Gülen places reconciliation at the moral center of his vision, emphasizing forgiveness, empathy, and dialogue as ethical imperatives. His advocacy of interfaith and intercultural engagement addresses the psychological and relational wounds of conflict by humanizing the other and challenging fear-based narratives that cause division. Service further strengthens the normalization by translating dialogue into cooperation and shared responsibility, where policy tools often struggle to generate enduring trust. Gülen offers a grassroots mechanisms through which normalization can be cultivated and sustained over time. Taken together, the comparative analysis suggests that durable peace is most likely when institutional reconciliation is paired with moral reconstruction and when policy-driven interventions are complemented by values-based civil society engagement. But one thing is that Gülen says that even they complete each other, the most important thing is the bottom-up process here. He says that top-down processes, they are related to political agendas, and they come and go with the elected officials. But the bottom-up approach is the one which will really establish the peace in this society. So thank you very much.